Hello, and welcome to Hollywood Impact. We've got a little solo review for you today. I went and saw Kraven the Hunter, and just right off the gate, I want to preface this with, I'm sure a lot of you have seen thumbnails and heard that the movie's terrible. Notably, this had a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes at the time I watched it, and I just want to let you know right off the bat, it's not that bad. Like, 15% is low. I want to start with the performances. They're I would call it Sonyverse acting. If you've seen Madam Web, you've seen Morbius, if you've seen Venom, you kind of get the same thing. It feels like the same writers, so these actors just have goofy lines, dialogue that doesn't always make sense. So the performances are, they're not great. Like even Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kraven, he's a great actor, but it's just what they give him here, it's not great. And you can just tell, it doesn't seem like the actors are like bought into the movie. I don't know if I want to go as far as say it's bad. It's below average on the performances. And again, there's talented actors here. It's just either they didn't care or it's strictly the content they were given to act wasn't great. Story, also not great. Again, Sonyverse, that's all you need to know about the story. It's got plot holes. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. The pacing, although I don't think it's as bad in Kraven, it's still, there's a couple odd decisions. I don't know anything personally about Kraven from the comics. I just know he's a Spider-Man villain. Now, this is similar to the other movies. They're taking villains from Spider-Man comics and making them more good guys. It's a whatever story. I was engaged. I think I like this movie more than most. I was never bored with the story, even with its problems. I just kind of take it as this is a superhero movie. So like, I don't expect, Shutter Island, comparisons for the story. Like I still think it's serviceable. It's more of the same for especially the Sonyverse movies, but even Marvel like stories, you have a lot of plot holes and like tropes that you follow. So I don't knock them as much as other people do for the story, just because it's really the same as any other superhero movie, except for ones that stand out. Music, as far as categories go, music's probably the weakest of the categories, even though I've just had two that were mid to bad. And now, granted, this doesn't really hurt the movie as a whole, because you're not really looking for music to kind of keep you engaged in this kind of film, but nothing memorable except like the very first scene. Like they're in Russia and it was some kind of Russian song and it sounded kind of cool. That's the only thing I like. The movie starts and I'm thinking, oh, this is kind of a cool song. But after that, like there's no musical pieces that I even remember. Like there's probably some music with the action scenes, but it's nothing you'll remember. Visuals, good and bad. Cinematography, actually, I liked. There's some really cool shots in this movie that really surprised me. Doesn't feel like we just watched Venom: The Last Dance, and that movie had nothing going for it on cinematography that I remember. Nothing stood out. But this movie actually has like some unique shots that are like, they clearly filmed it that way on purpose to make it look cool, and it worked for me. I appreciated it. Now, CGI is also in the same, that's also a visual, and CGI is not great. I imagine this movie had a large budget. It definitely could have been better because they rely a lot on CGI. I mean, there's a lot of animals in this movie, and the fight scenes, like the way Kraven fights, animal-like, a lot of climbing, and you can tell. But the CGI with the human combat ain't as bad as the animals. It really, you notice it. Again, it's not something that really takes you out of the movie. You're just like, I know that's computer generated, which, obviously, like, you gotta herd of bison, you're not gonna have a real herd around the actors, so I get it. It's just one of those things. You'll notice that it's not great. It's not Infinity War Endgame level CGI. But again, I count it against the movie, but not a ton. It's just, there's other things that are worse for me, so it doesn't take me out of it like it does in some movies. I also want to talk about the action. I actually thought the action was pretty decent. I like the way Kraven fights. It's kind of a unique take, not a unique take on action, it's just different. It's very hand-to-hand and very instinctual. Like, I think they did a good job of like establishing an animal-like connection with Kraven the Hunter. And something else I want to mention, just this goes towards the visuals, even though it's audio. But I heard they did like a reshoot for like a third of this movie. There's a lot of added audio or ADR in the movie, and you can really tell. Like, there's one particular line where like Aaron Taylor Johnson says like, you got to be kidding me, or something like that. And you see, like, when he starts that sentence, you see his mouth and it is like not moving. It's like either wide open or it's shut. And he says that line and it's like, okay, I know that's ADR. But you can, even when they're not showing their faces, you can tell when it's ADR. And there's a good amount of it in it. That's probably the worst thing about this movie, is how much ADR there is. And they did that to like clear up the story, to make it more concise, is what I've heard. I think just stick with what you got. If you're gonna reshoot, like reshoot. Don't add in ADR, because that really takes me out. Because you can tell when it's ADR, and I hate that. I'd rather it just be a bad movie than you add in lines to try to make the story better, because you already have a flaky story. It's just not necessary. The impact. This is actually interesting for me. It's potentially the last Sonyverse movie. Now, they still own the rights to Spider-Man. They let Marvel use it because it's so popular, but they still technically have the rights. I know there's talks of like a Nick Cage Spider-Man noir movie live action. That might be confirmed, honestly, like shooting already. I'm not entirely sure. So I don't think Sony's not going to make movies anymore with Marvel, but I do think this might be the end of taking side characters and giving them their own movie. They've all failed, essentially. They're all not great, and some of them I'm sure made some money, but still not great. I think the impact is actually a little high, because this could be the end of like a bunch of people's jobs, like what they do, making these movies. So it's not a great movie, but if you're one of those few people out there that just love all the Sonyverse movies, like this could be the last one. So I think that's interesting. I honestly think this is my favorite Sonyverse movie. It's either the first Venom I like a lot. It's either that or this movie. And like I would compare this to like The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think this is like with Andrew Garfield. I think this is better than his first one, The Amazing Spider-Man. But Amazing Spider-Man 2 with Garfield might be the best Sony movie. Not counting, I think all three Sam Raimi movies are the best from Sony. But not including those, this is up there for me. I enjoyed this movie. I never felt like I wanted to leave the theater. I didn't think it was dragging at all. I really enjoyed the movie. Russel Crowe's in it. That's cool. Some people hate the accent he does. I didn't mind it. His presence on screen I enjoyed. I gave Venom: The Last Dance a 4.5 only because I gave Joker a 4, and just me personally, I would rather rewatch Venom: The Last Dance than Joker 2. So this is better than The Last Dance, so I'm going to give it a 5. I think it's an average movie. Definitely not a 1.5 out of 10. That's just ridiculous to me. And the audience score reflects that. I think it has over 70% right now on the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. But the tomato meter, 15% right now. And it's not that bad. I don't understand why it's that low. I really think the critics are trying to kill Sony, because it's not that bad. Madam Web is a much worse movie than this one, and it might honestly have a higher tomato score. So I enjoyed this movie. I know 5 seems like a low score, but it's average. There's a lot of bad, but there's some decent, and I enjoyed myself in the theater.
Thank you so much for watching Hollywood Impact. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest from our channel, and of course, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.